Hi, everyone. I have two of the most wonderful creatures, furry souls in the universe here. This is Fluffy. This is Chocolate with the chocolate ears. And I have them in my lap and so glad that they are alive and well. Because last week there was a COVID-19 update from the New England Journal of Medicine about a recent study of domestic cats and COVID infections. The scientists are at the University of Wisconsin School of Veterinary Medicine, and they inoculated 3 cats with the COVID-19 coronavirus. And then they added 3 more totally well, no infection cats to the first experimental group to see what would happen. It only took 3 days. The 3 new cats were infected with COVID-19 in 3 days. But none of the 6 cats in the study ever showed any signs of illness. It's like you. And the scientists reported, quote, "If you are quarantined in your house and are worried about passing COVID-19 to children and spouses, you should also worry about passing the coronavirus to your pets that might transfer the coronavirus back to humans in the family." And also, during this pandemic, like Fluffy, he is the master of the house, and what he says he wants to rule. Well, I'm telling you, the one thing I would not do during this pandemic is let them outside. And I hope that you guys are keeping your cats and your pets inside as much as possible to protect them. Because even if they don't get sick, they can pass it on to you and to our family. So now I'm going to put Chocolate down. I love you. And I'm so glad that they are healthy and well and they are here. And if the last few words were a little muffled, it's because when I pick them up, Brad tries to keep the audio going, but they do sometimes cover the microphone. But they are worth it, as all of you write me. It's wonderful to know that my other wonderful human fellows on this planet love and appreciate animal life like I do, and that the cats are one of the more special furry souls, I think, in this whole cosmos. So I'm glad so many of you love seeing them and that they make you happy like they make me happy. And I wanted to start with new information that has come this week. And some of it was potentially good. News in the headlines such as Moderna coronavirus vaccine trial shows promising early results. Well, Moderna is a drug maker in Cambridge, Massachusetts, who has been working on this new mRNA vaccine in collaboration with Dr. Anthony Fauci, director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases in North Bethesda, Maryland. Moderna reported results from a very small but important human study of its experimental messenger RNA coronavirus vaccine, also known as an mRNA vaccine. The company tested 8 healthy volunteers with a trial vaccine against COVID-19 and reports strong immune responses in the 8 people without causing anyone health problems. And now what is going to be so interesting to see what happens. Moderna wants to move on rapidly to a larger phase 2 human trial with 600 people, which the Food and Drug Administration now has approved. And then, as soon as this July, Moderna wants to do a 3rd phase with thousands of healthy people. Since we all are getting used to thinking no vaccines are possible for a year or 2, this unexpected Moderna vaccine news in mid-May boosted Moderna stock more than 25% on Monday afternoon this week and helped raise Wall Street to its best day in 6 weeks. The New York Times reported that, quote, the potential strength of Moderna's mRNA approach to vaccine production is that it uses a genetic framework that can be quickly adapted for each new viral threat, close quote. Well, RNA can be synthesized in substantial quantities, much faster than live DNA microbes or recombinant proteins. And that's why an mRNA vaccine could be a faster answer for pandemic disease outbreaks like COVID-19. Normal vaccines train the human body to recognize disease protein by the shapes of the enemy viruses or bacteria. And then when the human antibodies see, quote unquote, enemy shapes, the antibodies attack and they envelop the enemy and they destroy it. Well, it is a little bit like working with a jigsaw puzzle where you've got pieces. Let's say that you have a piece in your hand and it's a square and it has a projection that comes off of it. Well, you have to find another piece that has a space cut out exactly like the projection, but a space that matches what you have in your hand in the shape, but it has to interlock. So you find the piece that will go into a space. Then you have two interlocking puzzle pieces. Well, in COVID-19, the puzzle pieces are like these long protein spikes that have sugar molecules at the end. Human antibodies try to match that spiky shape to engulf and absorb the COVID enemy. But it turns out that COVID-19 uses the ends of its protein spikes to get into human cells. And like a sneaky thief, it uses the human body's own ACE2 receptors to gain speedy entry into human cells. ACE2 receptors they try to help the antibodies detect enemy virus and bacteria shapes. But when it comes to COVID-19, the ACE2 receptors are deceived by the COVID spiny coronavirus, which gains entry into human bodies precisely through the ACE2 receptors, which should be blocking the COVID, not enabling it. But this deceptive entry, using the human body's own defense antibody system to gain entry and do damage inside humans, could also be why suddenly in the past few weeks have come the scary reports about babies to children to teenagers becoming terribly ill. At least 3 have died. Red rashes like these can be all over the body or parts of the skin and bloodshot eyes. And the COVID-19, in this case, appears to be linked to provoking an aggressive immune response in children that can kill and may be related to this whole issue of the deception of the COVID to the antibodies and getting in through the ACE2 receptor. Well, now, here is a headline that was in the New York Times on May 18th. Straight up fire in his veins, teen battles new syndrome. The patient struggling with the pain of fire in his veins was 14-year-old Jack McMorrow of Queens, New York. He ended up hospitalized with heart failure. When Jack arrived at Morgan Stanley Children's Hospital, quote, his resting heart rate was 165 beats per minute, about twice as high as normal, and his heart struggled to compensate for his alarmingly low blood pressure. This condition is a form of heart failure called cardiogenic shock, and doctors would discover that blood vessels throughout Jack's entire body were inflamed. So the muscles of his blood vessels were not controlling blood flow as they should. Next came anti-inflammatory and immunosuppressant drugs, and by the 10th day of hospitalization, 14-year-old Jack finally recovered enough from COVID-19 to return home, knowing that he might have some heart valve tears and inflammation that will take time to heal. And now I would like to share some excerpts from a recorded interview that I did recently about the whole issue of babies and children and teenagers having these dramatic interactions with COVID-19. And I went back to University of Pittsburgh cellular neurobiologist, Professor J. Couey, PhD.
That ACE2 is responsible for the local interaction between the blood, the epithelium, and the surrounding tissue. And so that's the reason why it can, depending on where the viral load ends up manifesting itself, you can get effects anywhere. It could also be that certain children, genetically speaking, may express a type or a variant of the ACE2 receptor that makes them more vulnerable to this kind of autoimmune reaction. But remember, even Kawasaki disease itself, there is no medical explanation for it yet. There's only hypotheses. They're calling it Kawasaki disease simply because it does the same things. It is an autoimmune kind of over-inflammatory reaction. That's also how everyone is dying from COVID-19. COVID-19 is not the SARS virus marching through your cells and destroying them. It is the virus going into your cells and replicating itself. But as it goes through your body is making a response to it that in some way is being deflected by its extremely unique binding protein. Its receptor binding domain is so unique that it is causing these over-inflammatory reactions, which I think are most easily explained by this competitive interaction between the ACE2 receptor and the antibodies and the virus. And if the antibodies are unable to outcompete the virus, then the virus will continue to do what it does. And in the meantime, the antibody will still have, just because it tried really hard to match the virus's spike protein, it will probably have some negative autoimmune affinity for the ACE2 receptor. The virus is essentially expressing a perfect mirror image of the ACE2 receptor. So if the body is successful at making an antibody to it, it will make an antibody to itself. That's where we lose.
The antibodies of the human struggling to deal with an enemy that it can't see.
Right.
They get stuck inside of these protein spines, and getting stuck and clogged in the spines also ends up confusing the antibody process of what shape they are supposed to mirror.
That's correct. Yes, it's just a really complex process that can spin out of control simply because of the overlapping shapes are not different enough to make the process work as it normally works. Where the antibodies are better, they are more easy to stick to the virus than the virus can target us, and we clean it up. It's just not working that way this time.
Do you think that this fall of 2020, going into the winter, could be terrible if there is some synergy between the influenza viruses and the coronavirus here in the United States? Could it be really bad here this fall?
What I would say is the coronavirus has made us change the way that we behave already. And I don't think that we're going to change so quickly back to the way we were, where we were high-fiving and shaking hands and hugging the way we used to.
What would you be looking for as we go through the summer as a sign that COVID-19 might be vicious again in the fall?
Wow, that's very, very difficult because the numbers are so unreliable. But if you see constant numbers all summer long, all the way until, let's say, September, then I would start to be worried that there's going to be an explosion. But if you see over the summer that actually the numbers go way down and the numbers of positive people maybe even go up, but the sicknesses and the deaths are not going up, then I think we might be in a very good position.
But this COVID-19 has been acting in such unexpected ways that it is not easy to say that this could just go away in a year or two. It is likely that it would be around in some kind of infectious percentage.
That's correct. I think that's the argument the epidemiologist makes simply because it's already too far spread. But then the question becomes, again, back to testing, how far has it spread? If it has spread much farther than we imagine asymptomatically, then we could already be much closer to the end than we think. If it hasn't spread, then much of us are still naive to it, and so then there's still a huge bloom that could potentially come.
And it is fair to say that there is no one who knows what is going to happen in October on with COVID-19 and influenza circulating together.
I don't think so. I think the flu is already quite unpredictable, and this is a social experiment. We've never tried to physically distance or socially distance in this way, so there's no real telling whether this will unleash some new explosion of common cold and flu because we're not interacting, or whether this will cause a huge lull in those viruses and they won't come back for a couple of years. That's also possible. We don't know because we've never tried this before.
That interview with Professor Couey was last Saturday, May 15th. And afterward, thinking about the high strangeness of COVID-19, its extreme affinity to human ACE2 receptors, and this haunting feeling that probably a lot of you also share with me, that the future is going to be a foggy unknown for months to come, I went to my computer to check email. And there was a new one from Trajano Paiva in Brazil. He's a producer-director of WPI Films Limited. We met at an American conference, and he keeps me updated a bit on Brazilian UFO news. His email read, quote, UFO in Mage, town near Rio de Janeiro, May 14, 2020. Dear Linda, this event took place in the town of Mage on the night of the 14th of May. The video was made by the people that live there and published at YouTube. Also, they did record a radio conversation between the military that were in the operation for the recovery of the UFO wreckage. And here follows the links for the UFO videos and English translator Lisa Bick's phone number, which is there. Best regards, Trajano Paiva. Now, I called Trajano and I learned that the correct timeline, since he had sent the email, is actually the night of May 11th to 12th, 2020. And I'm now going to show you the video that Trajano thinks is a genuine cell phone live action with police sirens that relates to an alleged hacking of local Mage military radio communications that night of May 11th to 12th about a UFO. I called Portuguese translator Lisa Bick, and over the phone on Saturday, May 17th, she translated for me a Portuguese transcript from Trajano, allegedly from the hacked military radio communication. And here now is Lisa Bick with me on the phone.
Hello.
Yes, Lisa.
Yes. Hi, Linda.
Thank you so much for your help. The first thing that I would like to do is to have you read the translation of that audio card. You give me in English, the translation from the Portuguese that is in the audio disclaimer at the end of the YouTube tape. And my understanding is this is supposed to be hacked audio into a military radio communication about what has happened between the Brazilian military and UFOs that were videotaped and that I am showing over the city of Mage, Brazil.
Okay, timeline. 7:06. Start of communication by radio between the military teams, base 1, 2, 3, and 4. Radio noise. Number 4 confirms arrival at the station. Alcântara base confirms the damage of the object with an American shot.
What do you understand American shot means, Lisa?
No.
You do not understand.
No, I don't.
Go ahead with the
Okay,
rest of the translation that you have in English from Portuguese.
Okay. 7:17. Confirm if it was shot down. Radio noise, not understandable. 7:26. 7:30. Confirm position. Go to the location. You will need 3 or 4 teams. There are too much material to collect. You have to take the small road. 7:31. Did you copy base 2? 7:32. By the small road, it's not possible to descend. 7:40. Did you copy base 3? 7:37. It doesn't have human appearance. Did you copy? 7:40. Radio noise. There are only these. There are no more. More radio noise. The others were in such a state that we can only take the ones that are here. 7:50. Did you copy base 2? Confused audio, not very clear and distorted. They are talking about clothes. 7:54. Go with protection. Nobody is going to touch those things. 7:58. These bodies are not human. Over. No way we can touch on those things. 8:03 till 8:08. Not understandable. 8:08 till 8:11. He is talking about taking down a drone. 8:12. Confirm if the equipment was taken down. 8:13. Capture the equipment shot down drone. Also is to be taken to the base. Over. 8:15. The truck is going down by the small road. Over. 8:20. Positive base. 4. Over. 8:23. Go taking it slowly by parts till the factory, and there we will see what to do. 8:28. It has to be taken with camouflage. Over. 8:35. Radio voice distorted. Everything is smashed, damaged, and there is no way we can put it there. There are more bodies inside. I have never seen such a thing. These things are not people. 8:45. Do you copy base 2? 8:46. Do not approach without proper clothes. Wait till it arrives. Take it as it is. 8:52. At the patio, it's protected. Closed. Cover everything well so nothing can be seen. Did you copy? 8:57. Radio noise. 9:05. Retrieve all cell phones from the guards. Did you copy? Do not allow anyone to record anything. Do you copy? 913, I did copy, base 2. 915, base 1, the American corps from Alcantara is going to the base position and will retrieve the objects. Did you copy? 922, it is to operate within the AGIA protocol.
What is that translated? What is AGUIA protocol?
AGUIA, AGIA means eagle.
Means eagle?
Uh-huh.
So this is saying, this last line, that all of this is to operate within the eagle protocol.
Uh-huh.
I went to Google Translate and typed in the Portuguese spelling AGUIA. And the English translation is eagle. It makes me wonder if the United States has had a special operations mission in Mage in Brazil, or maybe still has some sort of a mission. It is clear that whatever is all of the issue of proving that the radio transmission that allegedly was hacked, and that I went through the English translation with Lisa Bick, when it talks about there being non-human bodies and other things that seem to suggest that it is like a retrieval of some sort of a strange object that has bodies that are not human. That's at least implied in that translation with Lisa Bick from the alleged Portuguese. And I think that we all would like to have some kind of hard, substantial proof from somebody who has first-hand knowledge. So I extend to journalist colleagues and others in Brazil who may have access to first-hand eyewitnesses that can prove something about what happened in Mage on the night of the 11th going past midnight into the 12th of May. And the idea that there are other video clips of some kind of a military plane. The problem is that what went out on YouTube, except for that 50-second uncut piece that I shared, they were pieces of things without any ability to know exactly what was happening and who had videotaped, and what were there were supposed to be a military compound with explosions, but it was all chopped up. And when you see that video, it's very difficult to know. And Trajano agrees. Trajano in Brazil says what we all need are eyewitnesses who are willing to come forward on the record and proving who they are, name, address, phone number, and showing their raw cell phones if people were there. And he does think that that 50 seconds that I showed you with the sirens running and 18 glowing lights that are doing motions in the sky that are not consistent with things that are astronomical, or perhaps not even consistent with the organization of drones. And this will continue to unfold, and I know you all have questions, but I wanted to leave you with something to think about and anticipate for next week. I'm going to have another special segment next week about what happened in the United States when 2 jets went after a large gold UFO, and only one of those jets returned to an airbase. But that was not the end of the story. I'll have that next week. So Peggy, What do we have in terms of comments and questions from the audience tonight on what we have explored so far?
Well, during the video, a lot of people were wondering, could the lights in the sky be Elon Musk's satellites?
No. The Elon Musk satellites are extremely high. When they are released, he has a launch. It's this big launch vehicle. It goes up, and it releases a couple of hundred. Brad, what is it? It releases like
60 at a time.
60.
Yeah.
So it releases 60 at a time, and that is usually within what, 24, 48 hours, maybe 72 hours, is when people report it looks like a string of pearls in the sky. That's a fresh Elon Musk launch. 60. Very, very, very high. In the Mage cell phone video, whatever was, we'll say, those 18 moving objects that were fluid, sort of woven and then coming apart and then coming into the circle, that is at least 50 seconds of what appears to be uncut video. I'm open to people coming with more information, and I would love to hear from whoever it is who shot that iPhone. The problem that Trajano said is that the video, there were apparently more than one videos that went onto YouTube, and no source, no way to contact anybody. And that's why I'm hoping that residents of Brazil in Mage, if you have firsthand information, and we all would like to understand the truth behind whatever happened there, if something did happen, we need a professional approach in terms of eyewitnesses or an eyewitness with a name, an address, phone number, willing to show their unedited, unprocessed, not manipulated cell phone video to Trojano. Said he would be willing to meet with somebody. And we could then learn more, perhaps, about the surrounding environment of that video. I find it intriguing because if it were, it's definitely not Elon Musk. It has absolutely nothing to do with the releases of those 60 satellites periodically high. Are there people, military or otherwise, that could organize 18 drones to do specifically what is in that 50 seconds? The patterns that are undulating and move and come apart and go into the circle. And I would love to see video that you knew that it was drones, and could they be programmed to do that kind of ballet? And if so, why would they do it in Mage, Brazil? It's a town of about 244,000 people. It's across the bay from Rio de Janeiro, which is on the South Atlantic Ocean. And it is not a place that we have associated much with before now. So it isn't like a place known for trying to make a headline about something having to do with the military shooting down a gold UFO. So we need a lot more firsthand provable information if it's available. But I think this was definitely worth going into and considering because it made a tremendous amount of buzz. And one of the things that I have learned from all of my work is often when something is actually very real and is captured, let's say on video or otherwise by eyewitnesses, within 72 hours, you can almost count on it, comes in counter intel with it's a hoax, it's drones, it's this, it's that, and then 99% of the world goes away. So this is going to be very interesting to see if we can learn something more that falls into the category of credible reinforcement or credible, it's X, Y, and Z. So now I throw that back to you guys. Help me. People in Brazil, help me. If you have information, if you have a first-hand eyewitness who has provable, credible cell phone video, and they have felt afraid to use it for some reason, get in touch with me, and don't put it on YouTube. Get it in touch with me and get it to me, and I will get it to a professional video and image analyzer that I have worked with for years. And if we then can have a statement that this much is real and this much is unusual, well, then let's look at it. So that's the world we're in. It is extremely hard these days to come up with the hard, credible, factual proof that we all want and need on all things of high strangeness. So, Peggy, what else?
We have a viewer asking, why are there more reports of UFO violent attacks in South America than other areas of the globe?
You know, that is really a very, very good question. And as you just asked that, I remember having a discussion with J. Allen Hynek. He was the astronomer, PhD, Ohio State, then Northwestern, was working for the Air Force, allegedly as an astronomical consultant during Project Blue Book, told me personally with great, great sadness in his voice about 6 months before he died, that how badly he felt. It's so interesting. I think he would be okay with my saying this tonight, that 6 months before he passed, he met with me and Richard Sigismund in a dinner, and he said how almost embarrassed he was that he had allowed his good name and his profession to be used basically to try to dismiss the UFO phenomena, that that's what the Air Force wanted, and that he knew that that wasn't true. And we talked about the different cases that he had investigated, and his had been more focused for a period in the United States. I had had a period where, because of animal mutilation specifically, I got more reports and had interactions having to do with things in South America. And in that discussion with him, one of the pieces that came up was we talked about why was it that when you looked at the cases that came from South America, that there could be, there was one, I think this is the one we talked about. There was a case, it got written up, published, and it was almost unbelievable. But because of everything that I've been exposed to, I think it was telling the truth. And I believe that the date on this event went back to the 50s or the 60s. And the story boiled down to an eyewitness in a small, small town. And I don't remember if it was Brazil or Chile or Ecuador. It was like in there. And the story was the man was a farmer. And he was out doing something on the farm. And there's a clump of trees where he was working. And all of a sudden, there was this disc that came down right over the patch of trees. And he looks up, and the next thing he knows is that a beam came down and pulled the farm guy like this against the bark of the tree, not up through the branches. It was like almost a demonstration of being able to neutralize gravity with such control that they picked him up so high and then down. But in the process of doing that, was it what I'm going to say next? Was the question that was this purposeful? That on the side of his ribs and hips and legs that were up against the tree, skin came off. And he actually had some bleeding. And they couldn't figure out why was whatever this was doing this, up and down the body. It didn't kill him. He wasn't maimed for good. But the question was, whatever was the intelligence in that, obvious, it's a craft. I mean, you go back to the 50s and 60s, and there was no back engineering by Germany, Russia, the United States, the cast of normal characters. There wasn't anybody who had the ability that was back engineered discs that had beams that could come down and lift and neutralize gravity. So let's assume it's from someplace else, whether it's this physical universe, another dimension, another timeline. We have to add that anymore because it all is such a complicated cosmos that we're in. Whatever it was, did the intelligence do that on purpose? And there are a lot of other cases. I'm sure there are people listening who have maybe South American stories themselves. There are lots of cases where there seems, from the human side, cruelty or pain or various kinds of things like that. Why? Why was that done? No answer. Nobody's ever had an answer. And that was one of the subjects that night, 6 months before J. Allen Hynek passed from what appeared to have been maybe prostate cancer, and it went to his brain. And the big box that we were discussing is, what are the agendas of the different intelligences in the different craft that interact on this planet in such different ways? And that question from that night to this night of May 20th, 2020, that question is still really valid. What about another question?
Linda, do you think that there are other alien artifacts hidden underground across the Earth, and do you think that they will eventually be revealed?
I think the Dark Pyramid in Alaska that I reported about in depth last week, I think it is real. I think the vertex is 150 feet under the ground, 60 miles west of Mount Denali. I think it is a pyramid that is 550 feet from the base up to that vertex. So it's 750 feet from below the surface. And I do not think it is the only one on this planet. And I think those big underground pyramids were not built by Homo sapiens sapien. In fact, I think that I can say without much qualification any longer, I really truly am convinced that that Defense Intelligence Agency analyst back in December of 1999, in that deep, long, startling discussion that I've mentioned pieces of before that took place, that he wanted to talk to me about my book, Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 2. And then what he said seemed to me a kind of certitude based on long, long knowledge, 23 years. He said that he had worked on monitoring and analyzing the presence of 3 competing extraterrestrial biological civilizations that have come and gone on this planet for at least 270 million years. And if you took this on as a research project and you said, what was happening on the Earth 270 million years ago? It's sort of at that time of where the Permian extinction, and there was just all kinds of strange changes in life forms, and it isn't exactly 270 million years ago. But when you go back and you realize so much seemed to, it would flourish and be erased and something else would happen. And if three competing advanced intelligences that can move through this universe by bending point to point, time, space, fabric, the portals, and that they have their own agendas that are beyond our comprehension. Well, 270 million years ago would have been 268 million years before the first Homo erectus stood up in Africa. 268 million years. Three civilizations coming and going, building pyramids above and below, building Göbekli Tepe, doing who knows what through the solar system. They had, just in that one statement from that man, 268 million years before the consciousness of Homo erectus, and go another 2 million years to come up to Cro-Magnon, Homo sapiens sapien in the last 40,000. So much could have taken place on this planet, throughout this solar system, the Milky Way galaxy and beyond, that humans have had no knowledge about whatsoever. And we are left, in a strange way, with the legacies of other cycles of humans that only go back a few thousand years. And if all humans have been manipulated up the kazoo by three competing extraterrestrial civilizations for reasons that are still not clear, and they use holograms and neutralizing gravity and lots of invisibility. I think this planet, as John Keel said, it's a haunted planet. Well, it's haunted because there are a lot of intelligences who have technologies in which they can be right among you, and they're totally invisible. That's a big part of how the non-humans or other intelligences have interacted with this planet, raising the question, why can't it be straightforward? Why can't it be just an introduction? We can do X. We understand you're still evolving. You're still in tribal warfare. But we can help you and you can help us, and it can all be straightforward. Why can't it be that honest? That's a fundamental question for me. Peggy, what about another?
A viewer asks, why is the American government so quick to get to wherever there has been a UFO crash all over the world and demand that local authorities are not to tell anyone? Why do you think they're so quick to do that?
Because our government decided in FDR to Truman and Truman to Eisenhower that the United States of America was going to get that technology that they did not understand, and that we were going to be the first, and whoever had the ability to have what General Twining reported to Truman directly after the July 2nd to 4th, 1947, three crashes. And General Twining personally requested by Truman to go there and was there within a week. And the report that General Twining gave to President Truman, that is in the majestic documents that we've had for about 20 years, was Twining. You can feel the awe on the paper from a general to the President of the United States, that trying to describe what appeared to be like a water reactor. We obviously had a lot of information by then. We developed the first atomic bombs. Robert Oppenheimer and Einstein even collaborated in discussions. And so when Twining went there for Truman, he knew quite a bit. And that was, he basically was describing some kind of a water reactor as a propulsion system, and then described the symbols on what looked like keys, which has come up in so many aspects of the other intelligences interacting with this planet. Technology that seems to be always related to self-activating software. You can have a powerful propulsion system that can get you through the universe, maybe traveling at the speed of light. But also, what are they here for? And so much of what was already in that early report from Twining to Truman would be echoed as the decades wore on, that they have found images, they have found patterns, they have found symbols. And then you jump to the Dragonfly drone and all of the information that came from Isaac about working in an underground laboratory in Palo Alto for 3 or 4 years in the 1980s on back engineering extraterrestrial technology that was self-activating software in which all of the zeros and one programming was in every aspect of all of the material that the craft was made out of, everything. It isn't like going out and getting a stone and making a stone fireplace. It is manufacturing at the atomic level and programming inside of the atomic molecular structure of craft, of everything in the craft, of the uniforms, everything self-activating software. And all of that was hinted at in that Twining memo to Truman. We knew a lot. We knew that we had something that was worth, I guess, trying to exclude the rest of the world from. But the other side of the coin, if there had been a decision in World War II by the Allies, they knew that there was something in the sky that was silver and shaped like a lens, sometimes a sphere. They had reports of it. And we know from some of the documents that were released by the archive in England that Winston Churchill and Eisenhower were having discussions about UFOs, and that there's even a document where Winston Churchill said, it must be kept a secret for at least 50 years. And you can hear his bombastic voice talking with General Eisenhower, two brilliant men, I think with deep, abiding concern for what was going to happen to the planet. And they made a decision that they couldn't open up UFOs and the implied ETs coming fresh out of World War II. The stock market would crash, religions might be affected, all of these reasons. But wow, if you could run back the film and say, what if they had said, we must tell the whole world the truth? What would it have been like for the last 70 years if out of World War II, the United States of America, who helped so much, led the open truth with the world that we were not alone, that we now had technologies interacting with us that were not human? What would the last 70 years have been like? Probably not as many human wars. And maybe if we had had the truth in World War II, There could have been that public handshake with a non-human. We could have started the dialogue about this big universe that might be a holographic projection. Wouldn't it be something to be able to sit down with somebody who knew, and whether it's telepathic and images in your head or however you can communicate, and learn that it was a holographic universe projected from another dimension? I don't find that scary. I find that exciting. I'd like to know everything about it if that were the truth. And what a different 20th to 21st century this would have been. And now we're surrounded by COVID, and we don't know what the next 2 years are going to be like. And telling the truth, I'll ask it to you guys. Seriously. I'd love to hear from everybody around this planet. What do you think would happen in 2020 COVID Earth if the governments of the world finally stood up and told the truth? We're not alone in this universe. Here is what we have. Here is what we know. This is what the agendas are. Some are positive, some are negative, and some are neutral. And it is a different universe than you were allowed to know about. But we had good reasons. And now we're going to tell you the truth, because our planet no longer is totally controllable or totally predictable, because an act of nature has made it impossible for humans to easily dismiss with PR COVID-19. Time for another.
Linda, do you believe that we should be concerned with non-terrestrial and humanity on a whole?
Try that again.
Thank you for allowing me to do this one again. Do you believe that we should be concerned with non-terrestrials and humanity on a whole?
I think what I'm hearing is what happens, whether it's a handshake or what, for Homo sapiens sapien, us, to be introduced. This is an ET, meaning I'm saying metaphorically, in our faces, here are ETs. That it isn't a Hollywood movie, it isn't Star Trek, it's not a joke, it's not political manipulation. Here they are, and they are in front of us. From everything that I feel rushing through me right now, 41 years of trying to understand what was behind the bloodless, trackless animal mutilations around this planet. Having law enforcement tell me the perpetrators were creatures from outer space because they had seen the craft. Lots of people have seen the beams come down with an animal going up and an animal going down. And the first reaction of most humans, especially law enforcement and government, is the human population would never be able to take the truth. They would be shocked, they would be panicked. And every time I've heard that, I think of myself. In 1979, I knew absolutely zero about anything having to do with UFOs and ETs. I was not prepared psychologically, emotionally, spiritually to start trying to get to the bottom of animal mutilations, not having a clue exactly what was going on because the evidence was so bizarre. And then having sheriffs, deputies. Linda, the perpetrators are creatures from outer space. And remembering that the very first time that Sheriff Tex Graves said that to me up in Logan County, Colorado, It felt exactly like electricity hit me. It was one of those moments in life where you're colliding with a fate, you're colliding with something that is already there and you don't know it, as if these 41 years were already in that electrical hit when the sheriff said the perpetrators are creatures from outer space. And as much as I've heard about the possibility of conflict, wars, Anunnaki being connected to some of this, having their own atomic wars, there's always been the other huge background of the avatars. And if you just hold tonight in your mind these two completely opposing, contradictory, schizophrenic ideas. There are other intelligences in this universe, 1,000 years in advance of us. They can get energy from suns. And if they wanted to, maybe they could destroy life on this planet. And over here are the avatars who have come at different points in Earth's history. And they have said, you have souls. Your souls reincarnate in a vast recycling of consciousness in this universe. There may be an infinite number of other universes where there's no reincarnation. But in this universe, you are existing because you have a soul, and that soul recycles to a divine field. And that perhaps this whole universe is like a university. Really, really advanced and difficult for PhDs for souls. And it is difficult because of that juxtaposition between that which seems the opposite of the avatars. And it's trying to understand this. Why are we in a universe that has both? But maybe it's because we don't understand enough yet. And that is what keeps me going, and I do not have fear. I feel that if there was some real hostile, aggressive thing out there with some deranged motive to annihilate Earth life, why would it wait? I don't think that's it. There are ingredients that go back into Egypt and Samaria and Anunnaki and the much, much older Göbekli Tepe, which gets stranger and stranger. I've talked to you about being at Göbekli Tepe and feeling it was one of the strangest places I've ever been. I could not access what it was for. All of these strange animal bodies coming out of some of the huge 19, 20-foot tall limestone pillars, but not glued on, not bolted on, like somebody had the ability to take limestone 10 tons. They weighed 5 to 10 tons. And you made a pillar, and you somehow could make an animal all out of one piece, many of those. And as you stand there, it's exactly the same moment as it is now. It's exactly the same moment behind the questions. What is this? Why is this? Who made this? Why did they make this? And why does the human mind go to Göbekli Tepe, and everybody I know has had the same feeling? They can't recognize and understand what it's for. So we are now a 2020 COVID world. And there's almost a sense of the same kind of feeling. Why? Why are we now in this COVID world that is separating people and at the same time bringing them together spiritually? I'll leave out tonight on a question, in addition to the one, what do you all think would happen if we had in our face landing half a dozen species? What do you personally feel when you stand in front of TV sets now and you hear some of the straightforward talk from medical doctors, nurses, professors in universities? Have you ever heard so many times in your life, we don't understand this virus yet? We really don't know what we're up against. And at the same time, the feeling of wanting, don't you just want to reach out like this through the TV set? We can't embrace physically, but we can embrace that feeling, that pressure in your chest, that you want to hug these incredible human beings that are working 18, 20 hours a day in all of these fields, trying to come up with a vaccine, trying to come up with some sort of medicine. And those nurses and those doctors and the firemen and all the people in the trenches. I have never felt so much wanting to embrace a feeling of agape love, a true love for my fellow human beings, as I have in this terrible time of COVID that is separating us physically. And maybe out of all of this, it's what happens in the separation, that longing to connect. That's something that has to do with the soul, that's going to get us out of this. And in the end, maybe we are all going to be able to look at each other with more honest love and embrace the human family, no matter what else is out in this huge universe. I love you.